Hi, Scott here from Other Record Labels. Today I want to talk about the basics of sync licensing. We're going to do so by tackling 4 simple questions, and this is kind of geared towards independent record labels and how they can get involved with sync licensing and how they should be involved with sync licensing. The 4 questions I want to tackle is, what is sync licensing? Let's define what that means. Sync, S-Y-N-C, it's kind of a weird word. Number 2, how do you make money in sync licensing? And number 3, what is the record label's role in sync licensing? And then finally, how do you get started in sync licensing? That's everything we're going to tackle today. By the way, we've tackled this subject so many times over the years, and I've actually put together a free guide on sync licensing, and you can download that for free at otherrecordlabels.com/sync. That's otherrecordlabels.com/sync. And what I've done is I've put like all of the interviews I've done on this subject over the years and the videos we've done on this subject. All of it is together on one webpage, and you can also get our free guide there. So what is sync licensing? Well, first of all, sync is short for synchronization, and it's the act of syncing music, a recording, with a visual media. That could be a TV commercial, it could be a documentary, it could be a film, it could be a TV show, it could be a video game. It's intentionally taking the song and putting it together, syncing it with a video. So to explain what it is, I'll explain what it's not. Imagine you're watching a hockey game on television and you see the players on the ice, and just before the puck drops, you hear music overhead. That's not sync. Even though you're watching TV and you're hearing the music that's playing live in the arena, that's not a sync because it's unintentional, it's incidental. But if they go to commercial and it's advertising some sort of, and there's rock music playing in the background, that's an intentional sync, and that would have required a sync license. Sync is a vital part of the music industry because not only is it an additional revenue stream for independent artists and independent record labels, but it's also a great way for fans to first hear of us. There's a lot of bands and music over the years that we discovered on TV shows or in movies. We use Shazam when we're watching something and we want to know where that song came from, or maybe it's a YouTuber who used the song in the background. Anyway, it's a really good opportunity for fans to discover artists and for artists to discover new fans. Now, how do you make money in sync licensing? There's 2 primary ways you make money in sync licensing. The first is what we call a sync fee or an upfront fee. That's a fee that is based on a lot of different factors we'll talk about, but it can be anything from $50 to $500,000 to $5 million. Basically, a movie studio will say, we need a song for the closing credits of our movie. We're paying this much for the sync fee. Do you agree? And if they want to use your song and you agree to the terms, that's the sync fee that they're going to pay you. The sync fee is based on a lot of factors. It can be based on the budget of the project. It can be based on the prominence of the song. Is it used in the closing credits or the opening credits or on a movie trailer or on a national campaign? Or is it used in the background of while dialogue's happening? How popular is the artist or how popular is the song? If it's the Beatles or if it's All You Need Is Love, that's an extremely popular song. It's going to cost millions of dollars to use that in a sync. Is it a song that nobody's heard of? It's just an instrumental dance track. That's going to draw a smaller sync fee, especially if the artist is unknown. If the artist is massive, but the song is sort of unknown, it's going to be somewhere in the middle. There's also royalties, which is your publishing and your performance royalties. Now, this usually comes afterwards. So the director or the music supervisor is going to pay you the sync fee, but then you're going to get money when this show is played on television, or if there's other performances like on YouTube of this video where the money is going to go to your PRO, like ASCAP or BMI or SOCAN or PRS, and then you'll get paid from that. Let me give you some examples to help explain how this works. Okay, so a couple years ago, I had a song placed on the TV show Degrassi. You remember that Canadian show that had Drake for a minute? Somebody paid me to use one of my songs in the closing credits, in the very last scene of the season finale where the 2 main characters were giving up a baby for adoption. It played for like a minute and a half. It was like a very heartfelt scene. The song was really loud in the mix. And I got paid about $1,000 or $1,500 for that placement. Plus, every time that show got played on reruns, I would get in between like maybe $30 to $50 every time that episode played for the next couple of years. So if we look at some of the factors, is the song well known? It was sort of known. As the artist, well known? Not really at all. Is it prominent in the scene? Yes, it's very prominent. What's the budget of the production? Well, the show is pretty big in Canada. It wasn't in America yet at the time. So it's like fairly big, but also it's not as big as an HBO show or Seinfeld or ER. So the budget wouldn't be that big. So $1,500 seemed pretty fair. Plus, I ended up getting maybe almost another $1,000 in performance royalties over the next 5 years. Now, contrast that with a couple of years later, that same show wanted to license another song, but from a different artist on our label. But this time, the song was just going to be used for about 30 seconds in a cafeteria, playing on the overhead speakers of the cafeteria while the main characters chatted in the cafeteria. So you really couldn't hear it that well. You definitely wouldn't have heard that song and go, I want to Shazam this. What is that song? Whereas my track that was played the year before on the show, the dialogue was cut out and it was just me singing over top of the scene. So you would really pay attention to the song. So in the case of the cafeteria track, we got paid about $200. It wasn't that much at all. Plus, I think there was a bit of royalties in the performance royalties, but again, it wasn't very significant. So there's how you can see where the sync fee could be anything across the board. Years ago, we had a request from a university for their a fundraiser for their college radio station to use one of our local artists' songs. They were going to pay $50. It was just an honorarium. It wasn't very much. I liked the station. I liked the person. It was no big deal. That same song had an opportunity at being included in this like gas company, what do you call it? Like petro station, gas station, national campaign, and the sync fee for that was $250,000. We didn't end up getting that one. It went to someone else. We were like second or third place. But anyway, that just shows you like how the sync fee can be anything from $50,000 to $250,000 and beyond. Now, before I move on, there is another way that you can make money through sync licensing that doesn't involve royalties and doesn't involve the sync fee. And that is just basically kind of the indirect exposure that an artist gets. Now, I know in the music industry, we don't like the term exposure. However, if your song got played on a really popular HBO show like Euphoria, and maybe like your sync fee was like $500 or whatever, and that's okay. It's not that great, especially for HBO. I don't know what they pay. I'm just using an example. But if it's in a cool scene and a lot of people watch that show, chances are your Spotify numbers and your Shazam numbers are going to go up when that show airs. And anytime people watch it later on HBO Max, people will discover your song. So there are some other added benefits of getting a sync fee that don't come immediately. Okay, moving on to question number 3. What is the record label's role? So for a master recording, it's either owned by the record label or it's managed by the record label for a certain period of time. If you're an independent artist and you don't have a record label, then this is irrelevant. But for a record label who wants to get involved in sync licensing, you need to be able to manage the master rights of your catalog. That means that when a music supervisor calls you and say, hey, we heard this song on Spotify, we think it's really cool, we want to use it in a TV show, do you have the rights to it? Do you have the instrumental version? Do you have the stems? Do you know all the metadata and who wrote the song? You as a record label needs to have all that information on file really quickly so that you can provide the music supervisor with everything they need. They work super fast. So if you hem and haw and say, I don't know if I have the rights to this, I don't know if we have the WAV file, let me get back to you in a couple of days, they're already going to have moved on to another artist, another song. Record labels also have to coordinate with the other songwriters and with the publisher to make sure that we have all the rights at all times. Maybe a record label has to work with the mastering engineer to make sure they have a mastered version of the song as a WAV file and also a mastered version of the instrumental version of the song as a WAV file. This is confusing, but this is the record label's job to kind of jockey all of these things that they have to have on hand. You also have to network as a record label, start to build relationships with sync agents and music supervisors. Before we move on to number 4, which is how to get started in sync licensing, I want to just shift our focus from sync to manufacturing vinyl. And I want to thank our sponsor of today's video, Hellbender Vinyl. They are the first and only pressing plant in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They are new, and they're also from our record label community. So they're very sympathetic and empathetic to the needs of small indie labels. So if you are, yes, sync licensing is a great piece of the revenue pie for record labels, but so is physical media and making great records that people want to put on their turntable and have in their collection. So when you're ready to get a quote for your next vinyl pressing project, reach out to our friends at hellbendervinyl.com. How do you get started in the sync licensing world? Well, the first thing is to organize your catalog and to start to build up a catalog of great music. Build up a catalog of quality stuff, things that people will be drawn to, things that people really want to put on their television show or in their documentary or on the YouTube channel. I think in the sync world that the cream does rise to the top. Even though there's so many use cases for music and so many different platforms and media these days, I still do think that people are looking for quality. The second thing I think you can do to get started is to focus on a sonic niche for your record label while you're trying to pitch to music supervisors and sync agents. Here's what I mean by that. I think a music supervisor, and this isn't my idea, this was told to me by actual music supervisors, and this is stuff that I've heard over the years and my own experience. But I think a music supervisor really wants to have one contact for all of their bluegrass music. I think a music supervisor wants to have another contact for all of their lo-fi beats music, and maybe a couple contacts for some cinematic instrumental music. Or maybe they know if I want kind of glitchy Nine Inch Nails type of cinematic music, that I have this one artist, composer, or record label that has a big catalog in that vein. I think it really simplifies their job. If the scene calls for like 50s rockabilly music, then they're like, you know what? I know a record label that specializes in 50s rockabilly music. I'm just going to reach out to them. So you might think, let's get some rockabilly music. Let's get some hip hop. Let's get some bluegrass, some jazz, some folk. I don't really think that's the best way of doing things in the sync world. I could be wrong, but from what I've heard from sync agents and music supervisors, it's really good if a label focuses on a genre, a very specific style. Yes, they're only going to get a phone call once every 6 months, but usually they're going to get the gig because the music supervisor knows they have exactly what they're looking for. As you start to build your contacts, do more research, promote your music, get your artists to be featured in more things, just focus on staying organized. Every time you finish a new single, make sure you have a Dropbox folder that includes all of the metadata, the promotional photos, the WAV files, instrumental version if possible, a stems version if possible of all the different instruments. Music supervisors will love that. So that when your hard work pays off, after you've networked, or maybe you've signed with a sync agent, maybe you become friends with a music supervisor, after that's all paid off, maybe you become known for a specific genre. Just make sure you're ready for when a music supervisor calls you and says, hey, I need something really quick, because they're always on the tightest turnaround timeline. And you want to make sure you're ready and professional, because then they'll call you again. I hope you found this helpful. We're just covering the basics. So all of the more complicated stuff, everything, all of my resources, an online course, a book, a free guide, everything is at otherrecordlabels.com/sync. And thank you again to Hellbender Vinyl for sponsoring today's video. Thanks for watching.